Two title rivals, wheel to wheel.
Max Verstappen on the defensive, Lando Norris on the attack, they both go off the road.
Two Ferraris at the front.
Charles Leclerc wins the US Grand Prix. It will be a Ferrari 1-2, thanks to Carlos Sainz.
Welcome to Texas for F1 Nation's review of the United States Grand Prix. I'm Tom Clarkson, and joining me here in the Austin paddock is F1 TV commentator Alex Jacques and F1 Statsman Sean Kelly, also known as Virtual Statman. We are at the Ferrari hospitality after what has been a sensational weekend for Formula One, but also for Ferrari.
Update this, update that. They brought none. They finished 1-2. Superb performance from the entire team. And that is a proper win to savour for them. And they are in the hospitality. The champagne is flowing.
The champagne is flowing. And Sean, I feel like this is different to Melbourne. Of course, it was a 1-2 back then, but this feels different.
Well, we've had such a strange season. We thought it was reverting to type early on. It's another season of Red Bull, Verstappen dominance, and suddenly from Miami the script was flipped on us, and we've had a completely different season where I've never known a season where there's been so unpredictable, that we have four teams from week to week that can be competitive and win Grand Prix. I mean, we've had three teams this season, all of whom have won at least 3 Grand Prix. We haven't had that since 1977. So in living memory, we haven't had a season like this. And going from week to week where, like, I mean, who had Ferrari at the start of the day? We were all thinking Norris v Verstappen, the big face-off at the front. And before we knew it, by the time we reached turn 2, it was a completely different race.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to sound a smart aleck, but I was actually quite confident for Ferrari. I thought their pace in the sprint was ominous. But anyway, before we get into the nuts and bolts of this, let's hear from their drivers now. Carlos Sainz in a moment, but first, the winner of the United States Grand Prix, Charles Leclerc.
It feels really good, as every victory feels special for its own reason, and obviously from the start I felt really good with the car. I was quite confident from yesterday because even though there were quite a lot of fights yesterday, the car felt great, and we knew that we had a good race pace. After that start, when I got out of turn 1 into first, I knew that it was all about trying to use the pace of the car that we had yesterday and trying to take care of those tires, and the car felt great. So from that moment onwards, it was a bit of a lonely race, but it's a good kind of lonely, and I hope we can reproduce that in the future.
Can you tell us a little bit more about turn 1, lap 1, from your point of view?
I mean, I knew that Max and Lando would be very aggressive towards each other. I mean, they are fighting for the championship, and I got a good start. I saw that Max was going towards the inside as well, Lando. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna prepare the exit of the corner, which was obviously a winning bet. And from that moment onwards, then I could focus on my own race.
What about the Constructors Championship? Ferrari just 8 points behind Red Bull, 48 now behind McLaren. Is anything possible?
Well, I mean, we've got to target winning the Constructors title. It's an optimistic goal, but that's what we are here for. So yeah, we'll do the math at the end of the season. Until then, I think the best thing we can do is to focus on ourselves, on our own performance, just like we did this weekend. It's been a really good weekend for the team and for the Constructors title, and we'll try and reproduce that as often as possible. And hopefully, at the end of the year, when we do the math, we will have won the Constructors title.
All right, very well done today. Thank you, Charles. Carlos, let's come to you. A brilliant weekend as well. Tell us what this Ferrari 1-2 means for you, first of all.
Well, first of all, congrats to the whole team. Congrats to Charles for a great win. And yeah, I think everyone needs to be very happy and very proud of this weekend, and yeah, of how we've recovered from a tricky middle part of the season to suddenly put ourselves in a position to dominate the race like we did today, and to be clearly the fastest car on track come race day. And yeah, I'm very happy to see this, and yeah, I hope it repeats itself from here until the end of the year, because yeah, it would be really nice to get another win before the end of the season.
Charles says the team must aim at the Constructors' Championship now. With that in mind, which circuits do you think will suit the Ferrari going forward? What about Mexico next weekend?
Yeah, if I would have to bet, I would say Mexico and Vegas are our good tracks based on last year. I'm basing myself a bit on last year. This year, everything seems a bit different. But yeah, then I think Qatar is going to be a bit of our bogey track if I would have to bet, again, my money. And then Abu Dhabi, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what we're going to achieve in Abu Dhabi. But let's see. I just hope this pace shows itself again before the end of the season and gives me another chance of going at it.
As I said a minute ago, I was confident for Ferrari. The way they were able to look after their tyres in the sprint over 19 laps, there was something about them. And the moment Charles Leclerc took the lead of this race at turn 1, he was gone.
Checked out of town, didn't he? That was a bit of a cruise, let's be honest. I don't think anyone expected. There was a little bit of debate whether it be a one-stop, whether it would be a two-stop, whether they could work their way into contention. No one expected them to hit the front immediately. How could you? But no one expected them to sail away, and they did. He was relaxed. When you went on board and you saw the steering inputs, that was Charles Leclerc at ease.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I just didn't share your confidence, Tom. Well, maybe not that I didn't share your confidence about Ferrari so much as it is so topsy-turvy. You know, after watching Verstappen a relatively easy day at the office yesterday, it was hard not to have the impression that, well, you know, Verstappen's on the inside. Driver starting second here has been leading 5 of the last 6 years into turn 1. It's got to happen again. I've never seen Verstappen see a braking opportunity that he didn't love. He'll go for it. And he did. It didn't go the way we planned it. Leclerc gets out in the clear air and suddenly it's like, whoa, okay, he's actually pulling away. This isn't something whereby these guys are going to claw things back. This is actually Ferrari's race. So it's such a pleasant surprise. As a statistician, I hate races where you go into it saying, well, this is nailed on, this driver's going to win, or this team's going to dominate. And we just have so much almost chaos theory right now where the gaps between the cars are so minute. You know, top 6 on the grid in Monza, less than 2/10 covers the whole top 6, the closest top 6 ever in World Championship history. And the previous record was Canada this year. You know, we've never, ever seen Formula One so close where such minuscule differences completely turn a race on its head. Just track position was enough, you know.
Guys, what felt different about this win? You know, let's go back to Melbourne. Carlos Sainz wins that one. We then had Monaco, which Leclerc dominated, and then Leclerc was very quick in Baku. He won in Monza, but this was the first time I feel they've turned up at what I call a permanent racetrack. I know Monza's a permanent racetrack, but in terms of something that's got a bit of everything, and they haven't been this competitive anywhere else at this kind of track. And therefore, I feel the world is their oyster going forward now. I think they're going to be very quick in Mexico next weekend. And the Constructors Championship is game on. I really feel that for them.
The mix of corners around this circuit is key because Monza's an outlier because it's such high speed. They have always gone well, even in terrible years for Ferrari. They've gone well in Baku. They've gone well in Singapore. And they knew that. I think they were confident they would be competitive. They didn't expect to be 1 and 2. There's no way they expected that. And they've worked. They've worked, as you say, at a venue which is typical variation of corners, slow, medium, fast, a complete test of the car. The bumps were altered compared to previous years, but this is a serious examination passed. And yeah, they're absolutely contenders for the Constructors' Championship.
Yeah, I concur. I mean, the gap now, 8 points to Red Bull. Red Bull are 40 points behind McLaren. I think there was an attitude that once McLaren finally overhauled Red Bull, okay, this is McLaren's on a plate here. Maybe Ferrari are out of touch. And once again, we have another twist in the tail, I think. You know, not that Ferrari were ever completely out of it, but Ferrari have definitely reminded us that they are definitely in this championship.
Let's talk about winners and losers this weekend, right? Ferrari are the big winner if you think where they have been and where they are now. The car is clearly really quick. I think Red Bull have been a winner. I think that RB20 is performing better, particularly in a race. Okay, Max wasn't that happy afterwards, but that car has made a step forward. I think the losers in all of this are McLaren. As you say, Sean, I came here thinking the Constructors' Championship I felt was in the bag for McLaren and all eyes on the Drivers' Championship. But they've come here, I thought they were conservative in their approach, both to how they set up the car in terms of updates. It was just a disappointing weekend. I felt it's the first time we've seen McLaren underperform in many different areas. They've been on a roll these past few races, and it just wasn't there. It wasn't happening for them this weekend, and there's going to be some head scratching in Woking, and of course there's very little time to turn things around between now and next weekend in Mexico. That's the team under pressure.
It is now the team under pressure. The variables that Sean has talked about, how competitive it is, has made that the case, and getting it right at the right moment is key. They made a judgment call not to rush the raft of updates that will appear for this race in the gap, and that has left them on the back foot, and they were chasing that the entire time. Inspired lap from Lando Norris in qualifying, put him at the front, where realistically, if expectations were met, I think he would have fallen down the order if everyone would have had a second run, because that Ferrari looked good in the hands, certainly of Carlos Sainz in qualifying, and Max Verstappen was confident that he was going to get pole position. Listen, drivers with theoretical performance, they're always going to feel that. But McLaren made a call with updates, only a slightly altered front wing for Lando Norris. The result says that they got it wrong. In previous years, when it was just two teams, that's fine. The point swing can now be so great. If you don't take your opportunities at tracks that should favour you, and I think a lot of people expected McLaren to be out on top here, then you are on the back foot.
Symbolically, they're taking Lando Norris's face down in the hospitality, just as you were talking about his chances. They've just taken his face down from hospitality. But it's amazing the swing we get. You know, Lando Norris had the largest winning margin of the year in Zandvoort, the third largest winning margin of the year in Singapore, and yet here we come to Austin, and he was really an afterthought in terms of the race victory. And Piastri was, dare I say it, relatively mediocre was the way I described it. I'm sure that's how he'll feel after the recent competitiveness of that McLaren. Piastri was just not a player at all.
And he wasn't a player here last year either. I think this is a track, I don't know if it's a very technical track, whether the bumps upset the car in a way that experience somehow counts, but I would agree. I think Oscar's had a difficult weekend, which of course all adds on to the pressure that is on McLaren in the Constructors Championship.
Yeah, and yet Piastri's the top scorer in the last 9 races. So it's crazy that, you know, from a sort of broad perspective, it's going well. But from week to week, we've got these massive peaks and troughs that we're just, after these years of Red Bull dominance, we've just not been accustomed to.
This episode is sponsored by Indeed. When you're hiring, it feels amazing to finally close out a job search. But what if you could get rid of the search and just match? Well, you can with Indeed. With over 350 million global monthly visitors and powerful matching technology, Indeed is on hand to help you find quality candidates fast. I know people who've spent weeks or months on hiring, only to struggle with finding the right fit. I can't help but think that if they'd used Indeed, the process would have been so much less stressful. With Indeed, you can schedule interviews, screen candidates, and message them all from one place, making your hiring process so much quicker and easier. But it's not just about speed. 75% of employers say Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. Plus, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use it, the better it gets. So why not join over 3.5 million businesses worldwide that trust Indeed to hire great talent fast? And listeners of this show will get a £100 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/F1Nation. Just go to Indeed.com/F1Nation right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/F1Nation. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. We're talking now to Ferrari team principal Fred Vasseur. What a day. You must be delighted.
First exhausted, but no, for sure it's a very strong one. But we had a good feeling yesterday. We had a good, strong pace in the sprint race, but it's much more difficult to overtake and to make position. Today it went very well from the start to the pit stop to the strategy and the tire management. Honestly, everything was under control, and it was a very strong Sunday, and it's good for the rest of the championship.
What were your expectations coming into the Grand Prix today? Was it one you could win without the mess of turn one between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen?
Well, I think yes, because that the pace was strong, and we were more on the management side after 15-20 laps. It means that I think we had a good delta of performance, but what is true today was not perhaps true yesterday and won't be true next week. It means that it's a very good and strong feeling for each team, but the feeling is even better when you are in front.
Fred, how satisfying is it that the car worked at this circuit with the slow corners, the medium corners, the high-speed corners? You've always been quick in Singapore. You've always been quick in Baku. How much does it mean to the team to be quick at a different type of track like this?
Well, it's true that we had a sequence with Monza, Baku, Singapore, not with the same level of downforce, with probably the same characteristic of corner, a short corner, and this was fitting pretty well with the car, but we didn't exactly know what will be the outcome in this kind of track. Each year you have a part of the circuit of the track very bumpy and another one very smooth, and you have to make some choice and trade-off when you set up the car. And it was clear this weekend that we are not the fastest in the high-speed corner, but overall we are in a good shape.
So when you look at the remaining races, given what you've just said about not being the fastest through the fast corners, how do you see the championship battle?
Let me be focused on the party tonight.
Quickly, where are you going? Can we join you?
No. Then we will be focused on Mexico, and I think the most important is to take session after session. We are not thinking about the championship, and I want to keep the team into this mood. I think it's important to be focused on pure performance, session after session, and not to have somewhere in your mind the championship and so.
Why? Because you don't want to put extra pressure on the guys. Is that why you're not thinking of the championship? Because 48 points with 5 races to go, including 2 sprints, seems to me, given the pace of the car here, to be absolutely game on.
Yeah, but this is your feeling tonight. It was not your feeling 1 week or 2 weeks ago. Everybody was speaking about McLaren, and then it was before this it was Mercedes, and before it was Red Bull. This we have to take it with a bit of distance. We never spoke about something like this because we know that it's still a long way, and if something can arrive at the end, that it will be more by the performance on the day per day than by the approach on the overall championship. And so that honestly that we know perfectly that next week it will be a complete different challenge, that Mexico is one-off into the season. And we will start from scratch, and you can have a complete different result in Mexico in 1 week time.
Fred, if there's one thing you feel you've changed at Ferrari in your time over the last 18 months, what is it? Because there's a sereneness now about this team. There's less panic. The strategy decisions are all very calm and are now invariably correct. But is there? Can you put your finger on one thing that's changed during your time here?
Difficult to say, honestly, that...
Hang on, Fred. Here comes trouble.
He's so good. I said I'm inspired by Fred and the Ferrari team and his performances. I really am.
Been a great day for them.
He told me for once you don't look idiot or something like this in the WhatsApp, no?
No, I said you still look idiotic, but you're not idiotic. It's so good how you recovered from before the summer to being right dominant now. We're looking at it with admiration.
Well said, Toto Wolff.
I don't want to give you a kiss, then they would know.
Bye, Toto. Travel safe. And Fred, did we get to finish what we were talking about in terms of what you've changed?
Well, it's difficult for me to speak about this. That what I want is to have people taking more risk and power to take risk. And I think we are in this mood and approach. For sure, we have to improve, that we have tons of things to improve, and this is also important to keep this mindset. It means that even if you when you get a good result, it's not the end of the story. And to come back on Monday with a long list of things to improve when you are winning, it's a good mentality.
Fred, it's been a phenomenal weekend, not just a phenomenal day. Many congratulations to you and to Ferrari. Enjoy the party. I'm going to pester you again later to find out the address.
I will, and it was a good weekend, because I was not in the press conference also.
Max Verstappen on the defensive, Lando Norris on the attack, Lando Norris going through on the brakes, or can Verstappen hang on to it? He keeps his foot in, they both go off the road. Norris moves ahead for the first time since lap number 1, but he did so with all 4 wheels off the road. That one surely will not count, he will surely have to give the place back. third on the road, but with a penalty applied, it will be fourth position for Lando Norris. Max Verstappen takes points out of his title rival.
Well, look, let's hear from the title rivals now. Of course, Max Verstappen led Lando Norris by 52 points in the drivers' standings coming into this weekend. The gap's now 57 points, which I think Max wouldn't have expected coming into this weekend. So let's hear from the guys, starting with Max Verstappen.
I think today wasn't the best race for us compared to yesterday, for example. Just struggling for balance, for grip. Couldn't really brake, rotate the car. Quite quickly onwards, I realized that we're not going to win the race, but just tried to do my own race. I think we did the best strategy we could as a team. And then it was, just surviving to the end. And then, of course, Lando arrived. We had some really good battles, honestly. It was really a lot of fun. But, overall, it was still quite a tough race for me.
Can we just elaborate a little bit on the battle with Lando? Two significant moments in the race. Turn one, first of all. Turn one, lap one. Talk us through that.
There was a gap on the inside, so I went for it. That corner is very wide, so it gives you a lot of opportunity of going very wide or try to go really tight. I chose for that option, and I still came out second. Started second, came out second out of turn one, but this time, of course, then it was Charles in front. I think it worked out quite well for me because Charles was anyway faster, so he just pulled away, and from there onwards, I just tried to do my own race.
And what about the moment? Turn 12, 4 laps to go. Can you just talk us through the moment he came round the outside?
Yeah, I think it's quite clear you can't overtake outside of the white line. I mean, I got done for it also here in, I think, 2017 or whatever it was. So I lost my podium like that. So I was, just remain calm, tried to do the best I could after that to bring the car to the end because it was not easy with the tires and the situation that I was in. But overall, I still really enjoyed that battle that we had.
Hey Lando, just hard luck with how it all panned out, the FIA's decision. Just kind of give me your view of that really cool battle and the way that you did fight back against Max, and then obviously the decision not to give the place back just in case, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, clearly I didn't give the position back because we thought we were in the right. Clearly we weren't. I still think we were, considering Max went off the track. Normally if you defend your position and you go off the track, you have to give the position up. In that case, I was ahead. I kept my position because he needed to give it back. And that's the way it is. So I think I did the correct thing, but I don't make the rules. Max drove well. It was a fun race between us, good battle. And he defended well. He did everything he had to do. So I didn't have enough today. I didn't drive particularly well. It was a tough challenge out there with the tyres and the car. It was a difficult day. So it's tough when you're on the limit and your tyres are old and hot and it's slidey. It's easy to make mistakes. Those things happen, but it's tough. I think our only position we could have got today is third. The Ferraris were on another level comparing to us today, so difficult to expect a lot more, honestly. I think even if I led after turn one, I would have finished third at best. So when you look at it like that, I was only one position away from where I should have finished, but that one position is probably the most critical because it's against Max, so I'm not happy with today at all. We struggled as a team. I didn't do a great job, and we'll both try better next time.
So, Jakesy, in commentary, were the trousers on fire as Lando went round the outside of turn 12?
Yes. That is what I absolutely live for. The top two drivers in the World Championship, wheel to wheel, lap after lap after lap. Brilliant driving under pressure from Max Verstappen. The car placement was superlative, lap after lap. There are some times where the position, the point swing, everything that we are going to talk about for full context becomes irrelevant. There are symbolic moments in championships where you know that the person who comes out on top is going to gain so much energy and so much momentum. Hamilton and Verstappen put on a similar show for the win here in 2021. This was Lewis's domain, wasn't it? For so many years, Verstappen pinched one off him at a Lewis-Hamilton circuit. Today, we knew that Lando Norris had to reverse the damage done in the sprint. Lando knew that. He had multiple laps to do it. The team gave him the strategy to get by, and it was side by side, but his car was in the wrong part of the racetrack. You were never going to be given the room on the outside of turn 12 on the evidence across the entire weekend from most drivers in the field. Certainly not when the World Championship is on the line, and he knows it, which is why I think he's beating himself up a bit.
And do you think, I mean, he was clearly a bit timid at turn 1 at the start of the race. He left a gap down the inside, Max went for it, and I'm sure he was frustrated by that. I wonder if that influenced somehow his thinking in this battle, because I thought he was very controlled in the laps leading up to the moment when he actually went for it round the outside, and I thought he was doing everything right. It was very clean, it was a very mature performance, but when it came to it, Max, I felt Max had him under control. Max knew exactly what he's doing, and these guys raced each other so much. They know how to play each other.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with you. I mean, it must annoy Lando that he had this stat about always losing the lead when he's on pole position, except until we got to Singapore. But then we knew that it's this back-to-front grid here, where starting second historically is better than starting first. So I'm sure he must have gone into it knowing that. And the fact that Verstappen still went for it, you know, if anybody's going to go for that gap, it's going to be Max, isn't it? There was a bit of a, I suppose it's a court of public opinion, isn't it? Like, can Lando out-duel Max in a straight fight? There's probably a lot of that going on. Certainly in the suites I was in, I do a lot of hospitality hosting, and you hear that gossip, you know, can Lando actually race Max, or does he need a car that's actually convincingly quicker? I guess that was partially answered today. I only saw the incident for which he was penalised. I only saw it once. So I hesitate to get off the fence and pass judgment about whether that was the right call or not. But I'm sure this is a conversation we're going to be having for the next few days about was the penalty valid, was the penalty not valid?
Well, there have been so many penalties, 5-second penalties this weekend. We go back to the sprint, Oscar Piastri, Pierre Gasly, and of course numerous penalties in the Grand Prix today, starting with George Russell. And you know, we heard over the radio neither George nor Toto Wolff happy with the penalty issued there. And I think rather than getting on the backs of the stewards, who are trying to be consistent in a very difficult environment, I think again we should be looking at the circuits more than the stewards room into solving this problem, right? I look back to Austria, outside of the final corner, introduced this year a metre-wide strip of gravel, and it stopped people running wide overnight. And I think if they did something similar on the outside of 12, put a metre of gravel on just the other side of the outside curb, I think it would stop people trying to overtake round the outside.
I completely agree, and I said in live commentary, when we come back here next year, there's going to be a gravel trap at turn 12. Because what you want to do is you want to commentate on moments of brinkmanship, and everyone at home wants to see moments of brinkmanship and brilliant overtakes. But when you have the bailout option, and we're talking about penalties instead of the overtakes, we're losing one of the best elements of Formula One. So I think that change that you've suggested, TC, is absolutely going to happen in a year's time at turn 12.
But also, obviously, we're not racing drivers, but we've spent many years observing them. And I was trying to imagine, watching this battle, what Fernando Alonso would have done if he was Lando Norris. Because I feel he's the king of defending and overtime. So much experience in one man, and I think he would have still tried to lure Max Verstappen more to the inside, and I think Max would have covered that. He would have then jinked wide to get a clean run through 12, and then would have had him into 13, is what I think someone like Alonso would have done. I mean, of course, we don't know if I'm right, but am I being harsh on Lando, I suppose?
Well, what I would say is I had a similar thought when I was watching it live as well. We weren't watching it together, but it did occur to me that, you know, Fernando Alonso arguably, not arguably, one of the greatest rope-a-dope drivers. He could make drivers do things and then be like, damn, I fell into his trap. He's always been so good at that. I was thinking, actually, that Max Verstappen has such a reputation of being such an aggressive driver in wheel-to-wheel combat. Maybe doesn't get the credit he deserves for defensive driving as well, which is obviously a slightly different discipline. We think of Alonso as being able to, as somebody who can really defend. I mean, I think in particular Hungary 2021 when he kept Lewis Hamilton behind him in an Alpine. We had no business doing that, and somehow he did it for the long. He eventually got him, but it was a long wait. And I was thinking today, you know, this is actually great. Verstappen is able to keep Norris at bay when really I thought Norris would go past him at the first available opportunity once he had DRS.
Yeah, I think for Lando at the start of the race into turn 1, the architecture of that corner allows a lunge. And if you're in a World Championship battle, you're going to get a lunge. Remember when we saw Hamilton and Rosberg into the same corner? It's just the nature of where pole position is and where its second place is. If you even get a half-decent start, you can send one. So I think it's hard to criticize him for that. I also think we have to bear in mind that Lando's been learning at warp speed. Maiden win the last time we were in the States in Miami. Instant championship contender. It's very, very easy to do a slam dunk move for third when there's nothing riding on it. It's very hard to do a move for third up against Max Verstappen with it all on the line. You've got so much to lose because if you rip a wheel off in the braking zone, 5 rounds to go, Max might limp on exactly like I mentioned Austria. 50-50 moment. Lando gets the damage, doesn't finish. Max gets more points to the tally. Lando cannot afford that. The driving reflected it. But yeah, I'm with you. Let's go and get some gravel right now for turn number 12.
Look, final thoughts on McLaren. In terms of the pace of their car, I think they had the 3rd fastest car this weekend.
Yeah.
Do we think they can turn it round?
Yeah. They've got a load of updates in the can that they've opted not to bring, hoping that they would still have the advantage. I mean, as Sean says, they've been winning Grand Prix by 20 seconds in recent times, the previous race before the US Grand Prix. They've got more bullets in the gun. They're going to have to bolt them to the car because the relentless pace of development from the other teams. Red Bull have calibrated that car better. They've got a greater understanding. I think that was always more likely, wasn't it? It's not a full shutdown. We've had a long time between races, but it wasn't a full shutdown. They've got a greater understanding of that car, and Ferrari just have that development sweet spot right now.
Someone put it to me coming into the weekend that Red Bull were reeling in McLaren metaphorically with the whole ride height story of them having a mechanism in the cockpit to change the ride height of the bib, and that actually it wasn't a performance advantage. And all it was doing was making McLaren take their eye off the ball, and they were reeling them in. Zach Brown was the most outspoken about it, but you have to figure that there was some energy lost within McLaren worrying about that instead of focusing on themselves.
Again, I said about Lando, well, apply this to the team. This is a team, I'm going to borrow one of Sean's stats. This is a team that hadn't scored a point in Canada for a decade, now contenders for the title. They've been in the doldrums for a really long time. And they've had chances to perform well, get podiums, and to win races on occasion. This is the first time in a decade where they've been able to put a challenge together, and lessons like you've just described are learnt painfully, but they won't need to learn it again. I don't think there'll be anywhere near that much chatter if there was something contentious again. Zach is the perfect person as the CEO of the team to have a, oversized role. He's not running the race team, is he? Andrea's running the race team, so he's a perfect spokesman in this regard.
Well, look, final thoughts on this championship battle. So Max Verstappen has extended his lead to 57 points. He's going to be happy with that. Do you think the main focus in terms of championship challenge is now the Constructors Championship? What is it? Ferrari in 3rd are only 48 points behind McLaren. Any one of those can win this, or is it still McLaren's to lose?
No, on the evidence of today, it's a 3-way fight. I do think that it's going to be McLaren in the end, just because of the consistency of that car and the fact that every single time they've brought a big update, the correlation between what they expected to do and what it's done on track has been superb. We know there's more updates in the pipeline, and if they continue that trend, I think they'll just do enough to take their first Constructors title since '98.
It is absolutely a 3-way battle. I mean, if Ferrari do another 1-2 next week in Mexico City, I mean, they theoretically could pull right onto the shoulder of McLaren at the top of the championship. So it is absolutely a 3-way fight. We've got 5 Grand Prix still to go, plus 2 sprints. This is not hype. Definitely in the Constructors Championship, at least, we do have a 3-team battle there for the top.
So what about Mercedes?
You had to ask.
I had to. Do you know, one good thing that came out of this weekend for Lewis Hamilton is the pace of Ferrari.
Yeah, I was going to say that. He's had his worst day around this circuit ever, and yet he'll look at what they've achieved, knowing that they've not always traditionally been able to develop the car deep into the year, make the right calls. That's a team going forward. It's perfectly poised for him next year.
But I'm confused about Mercedes. Right, let's think back.
I think they're confused.
Well, that's the point, Sean, isn't it? Sprint qualifying Friday afternoon. George Russell takes the 2nd fastest time, qualifies P2 for the sprint. Hamilton was on a lap good enough for pole position, he claims. Okay, didn't work out for him due to a yellow flag. But that car was clearly quick at that point of the weekend. And then it just slipped away, almost by on-track session to on-track session. And then come the race, okay, Lewis had a terrible time and spins out early doors. And George Russell showed decent pace to climb back to P6, but it wasn't close to the top 3 teams.
No, I feel like it's not the first time that we've had to have a debate about Mercedes reversing through the field as a weekend progresses with that car that is very... Well, it's been a Jekyll and Hyde car since we changed to the new generation in 2022. They just haven't fully had a handle on it. And, and in mid-season, suddenly it became a contender, and we were like, "Oh, Mercedes are back," and then just as quickly, Mercedes are not back.
But I do wonder whether there's enough pace there. I was told it was 2/10, the package they bought, and if they can just get some consistency from it, and that can come from setup work. We've got a week or 5 days until we're on track again in Mexico. They could pull it back, but they got work to do.
Serious work to do. I think the nature of the sprint weekend format has flattered them, because when everyone understood the ride, the bumps, when everyone was able to dial that in, that's when they slipped back. I think when the cars were slightly higher earlier in the weekend, that's when they were in their sweet spot.
Or were they being particularly conservative after what happened here last year?
Yeah, and I think that's where the big 4 teams started the weekend, and I think when everyone got more and more aggressive with the ride height, that's when they found there was no more pace in what they brought.
My reference there is to drivers being disqualified last year for wearing out the plank more than 10%. So I guess they had to work out what the new asphalt was like. We talk about the new asphalt, but actually it was only in the straight lines, wasn't it, really? It was start, finish, straight, okay, turn 1, turn 2, and then the back straight. The corners where you're really working the car, it was the old asphalt, and the bumps were still there.
They just didn't progress through the weekend in the way that they would have wanted. It's a quick turnaround to Mexico, but this is the thing. If you don't find the sweet spot of the setup immediately, you're going to be the 4th fastest team of the big teams that we've mentioned so far.
Yeah, I've never seen a weekend as weird as that for Lewis, where he was just everything seemed to go wrong, and then he rotated off the racetrack just as quickly. I mean, he was second to last in Q1. That's happened once before ever in his career, Silverstone of 09, and he was the only retirement of the race. That's only happened once before. That was Hockenheim 2012. These are exceptionally rare events in a 17-year career.
He's in that odd headspace now. He's got 5 races left as a Mercedes driver, and then he's got the gargantuan challenge of Ferrari. He's going to a team he doesn't know. It's going to be new faces, and I'm sure he's putting a lot of energy into trying to learn the lay of the land in Maranello, and I wonder if doing that is somehow affecting what he's doing now. Am I doing him a disservice saying that?
I would say as soon as you sign that contract, a percentage of your brain is going to next year every single month that you run closer to it, because that's what's going to be defining for the rest of his career, not the final 6 races of 2024. The first 6 races of 2025 are going to establish a dynamic between Charles Leclerc, Fred Vasseur and Lewis Hamilton, and I think his focus is understandably and should be in that direction. No one remembers 19th if you put together an 8th World Championship. And so these races are completely atypical. Certainly around here, where he was just majestic in the first races that we ran around this circuit. Was it 5 of the first 6 he was the winner?
Here in Austin.
Here in Austin, so absolutely superb. Yeah, I think his focus is drifting towards pastures new. This is a massive move. He's not switched teams in such a long time.
In conclusion on Mercedes, can they bring it back from this? Are McLaren and Ferrari and Red Bull too strong, or can we see Lewis Hamilton winning a race before the end of the season, George Russell winning a race, or is that a bridge too far?
I think it's a bridge too far on the evidence of this weekend. Who knows what a little bit more understanding of the upgrades could bring them, but it's looking like they've done their winning for the year.
Under the topic of any other business, there are a couple of things I wanted to mention. First of all, Haas. And when we're talking about Haas, first of all, Ayo Komatsu. Get well soon, Ayo. I don't know if you guys noticed he was on crutches this weekend. He's a mad keen climber, and he had a bit of an accident whilst climbing last week. So get well soon, but upgrades this weekend. They worked, and they're making progress and points in both the sprint and in the Grand Prix itself. They've overtaken VCARB in the championship. It's a team of 350 people we're talking about here. What a phenomenal job.
Phenomenal job. Everyone pulling in the right direction. This is a team that couldn't update the car successfully for love nor money in previous guises.
Do you remember the upgrade they brought here to Austin last year? Didn't work.
And in the past, it's been so drastic, they've had to revert to the original season starting spec. Brilliant job done there in making sure that that is no longer the case, and what they're bolting on the car is taking them forward. Both the drivers did a great job across the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, Nico Hülkenberg was 8th in that race. That's Haas's best ever result in a home Grand Prix. I know there's a lot of pride from the American fans. I mean, I've been speaking in many suites this weekend. There is actually genuine a national pride towards the Haas team being a smaller team that is really punching way above its weight. They've scored in 4 straight races. That hasn't happened since 2018. That was the only season when they finished in the top 6 in the Constructors Championship. Previously, I can only assume that Ayo Komatsu got injured climbing the Constructors Championship.
Yeah, I like what you've done there.
See where I went with that one.
And he'll do that every day of the week if that's what it takes.
Do more climbing, Ayo.
Do you know, so Hulk, brilliant. Okay, and he messed up his qualifying lap for the Grand Prix on Saturday evening. But I thought it was also great to see Kevin Magnussen back to his punchy old self. He was racy, and okay, he finished the Grand Prix in 11th place, but he was quick in qualifying and did a great job. I almost felt it was the Kevin of old.
Yeah, it was the first time he'd qualified, got to Q3 at this racetrack for 10 years. It had been a long time coming for Kevin Magnussen. He hadn't been in SQ3, hadn't been in Q3 all year, did both on this weekend. To me, that's almost the litmus test of whether those upgrades work, because Hülkenberg's been out driving that thing all year. But Magnussen's now back in play. Suddenly it's like, wow, what a weekend. There's a lot of very smiling American fans that I just left behind in the Champions Club suite wearing their Haas gear, feeling very stoked about the idea that Haas could genuinely nail down 6th in the championship.
Yeah, and they need Kevin Magnussen as well, because they've only 2 points ahead of VCARB now. And you know, there are so many intra-team battles between drivers, obviously, but inter-team battles as well. You've got, obviously, the top 3 gunning for the Constructors' Championship. Then this battle between Haas and VCARB. Can Williams muscle in on it as well? Franco Colapinto, P10, doing his bit. I mean, what a guy.
He has always been quick, but I got to say, I followed his exploits in Formula 3, commentated on him this year in Formula 2. I didn't think he could do it week in, week out. Immediately.
Why?
Because the evidence of his career was that he would have phenomenal weekends of pace, and then next week you wouldn't see him. You wouldn't get a minute of screen time. I sometimes think this about elite sports people in general. Some people, you give them the big stage and they find their true performance. It's like he's born to race in Formula 1. There are Argentine fans on the pit wall with the flags demanding that he comes and sees them at the end of the race. For a P10, Brazil is going to be wild.
Seriously. Well, we've had that in the suites all weekend as well. I'm chanting Argentina, Argentina. It's been amazing. And what's incredible to me, the rabid support of the Argentine fans on social media. You know, if you make a single tweet about Franco Colapinto, you get half of Argentina retweets it. It's unbelievable the amount of, I don't want to say hype, because there wasn't hype about him. He was sort of a workman-like replacement until Carlos Sainz came along, and he's really played himself into contention. What was amazing today, 2nd points finish in 4 Grand Prix starts. He had the fastest lap of the race until 3 laps to go when Ocon took it off him. I thought Franco was going to have the fastest lap as well and get the fastest lap bonus as well.
And the team dynamic at Williams now is fascinating, I think. You know, Alex Albon clearly was under no pressure from Logan Sargent for 37 races. Colapinto is delivering day in, day out, much to Alex's surprise. and in qualifying, they were within, 100th of a second of each other. Albon just ahead, and he's now got the point in the race. Franco has. Alex hasn't. Alex finishes back in 16th. I think that dynamic will be fascinating to watch over these last races. And I'd love to know what's going through James Vowles' mind right now.
He's probably thinking he could have saved a few million, isn't he?
Gained a few million, I think, with the support that Franco has from his home country.
Obviously, there's only one open seat left for next year. Now, the way Franco Colapinto is driving and the way Sauber has still got a little bit of lead time before it becomes Audi, they might sit back and say, you know what, we're going to sit on the sideline and see if something else comes along the way. You know, much the same way as, Liam Lawson's had to sit on the sidelines for a little while. We haven't even mentioned Liam Lawson yet. But
we will. But you mentioned Sauber, the second seat. Valtteri Bottas in the build-up to this weekend was saying there's nothing more I can do. I'm just waiting to hear from the team. But I don't know what your sources are telling you, but I'm being told that Sauber are going to go youth over experience. And whether they get what they want will depend on whether Franco Colapinto will be completely released from Williams. They don't want him if he's on a bungee back to Williams. And the same applies to the man who's currently leading the Formula 2 Championship, Gabriel Bortoleto. They will only employ him if he's fully released by McLaren. They don't want him on a bungee back to McLaren. So that's what they want, the team, because I think they're probably feeling, look, we ain't going to come anywhere next year. Let's invest in youth and see where we get.
It's too bad they can't have Bortoleto. He's pretty good at winning from last on the grid. For those of you who
that is a great line.
If you watch Formula 2 with any great regularity, that exact thing played out at Monza a couple of weeks ago.
Jakesy, can I put you on the spot? Because
please do.
Of course,
I know where this is going to go. Terrific.
But, yeah. You, as well as being the authority on Formula 1, you do commentate on Formula 2 and you used to do Formula 3. You have observed Franco Colapinto and Gabriel Bortoleto.
Yeah.
Strengths and weaknesses of both. There's one seat available. You can have one of them. Which one would you choose?
I'd pick Franco for his speed. I think Gabriel Bortoleto is a phenomenal racing driver. His consistency was superb. He trounced the field in Formula 3 last year. He has adapted and been quick and been really good and really strong. Last to first in Monza with the help of a safety car, but still last to first in Monza for a feature race. Outrageous. I think he would benefit from what Ollie Behrman has had, seeing the leap from Formula 2 to Formula 1, time as a reserve driver. I think a bit of time behind the scenes would allow him to make that leap. If he wins the Formula 2 Championship, the list of people who have done that, third tier, second tier, back-to-back, pretty special. Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, George Russell, not bad. But when Colapinto has been through that cycle 6 months in advance, when he's looking so comfortable, make use of that. And if it doesn't work out, you've got someone else waiting in the wings, two great talents. And to be honest, for Sauber to have a choice between a potential F3 and back-to-back F2 champion and a driver who has found another gear of just instinct, has been superb behind the wheel, that is a luxurious choice in a really tricky season for them, and they can't really go wrong. And the other choice, if they don't fancy that, is a 10-time Grand Prix winner. Pretty good, considering they're P10.
And have yet to score a point. Yeah. Not just P10, but have yet to score a point, which I struggling to get my head around when you see that McLaren are on 544.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Sauber looking at another pointless season. I think they were pointless in 2014 as well, if my memory serves me right. So they've been in the doldrums throughout most of the hybrid era. There's been a few peaks along the way when they had the Alfa Romeo branding. But yeah, really, I mean, you're going to be marking time next year. Whoever gets in a Sauber next year is not thinking about 2025. You know, they're going to be thinking about the future. So it'd be a long-term project.
The last man I feel we really should talk about is Liam Lawson, replacing Daniel Ricciardo. He's been out of Formula 1 in the paddock, but out of a race seat for a year now. And I feel he's come back with a bang. To finish P9 ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, he's done everything that was required of him.
I really felt for Yuki when he came out the pits and Liam was ahead, and you know that the context that Yuki's heart would sink. Lawson had the fresher tyres. It's so brutal when the magnifying glass is on that battle, and he knew in that instant 1-0 Liam. For Liam Lawson to take an earful from Fernando Alonso, not just anyone, Fernando Alonso is unhappy with you, to shrug it off, to argue your case, and to come back the next day also race again against Fernando, wheel to wheel, do it cleanly, no afters, and then score points. That is about as perfect a return to the cockpit as he could have asked for. Really impressive.
Yeah, I think he's been fantastic. In fact, Franco Colapinto is the Liam Lawson of this season. I mean, we saw him last year. Again, it got in the car. I didn't have high expectations of him based upon his junior category results, and he outperformed what we thought. And again today, I mean, he was, 19th on the grid, gained 5 places on the first lap. You know, he set his race up beautifully with that and finished 9th. I mean, he's already in the points at the first attempt. Daniel Ricciardo only had 3 points finishes in that car all season. So, as much as I love Daniel Ricciardo, the early results I understand, but it seems like the change has borne fruit.
And if Lawson keeps doing this, I am convinced he'll be in the Red Bull next year.
Well, Christian Horner spoke to you on the record and said that situation is not closed. Yeah, if Lawson keeps banging in 8th and 9th places and can go wheel to wheel with race winners and world champions like Fernando Alonso and can keep in different facets of the job. So a key facet today was how are you going to respond when you've had a big Barney with a 2-time world champion? The next time you go wheel to wheel. Answer, great move.
I ain't intimidated by anyone. That's his message.
That's as important as being on the right strategy like Russell was, like Lawson was, like Colapinto was, and delivering. But, yeah, great start. Can he back it up? So intense to repeat that level of performance in a triple header. If he can score points in the triple header, he's in a great position. And remember, he's in this strange situation whereby his options range from not being on the grid, being in an RB, being in a Red Bull, and then you've got the task of being Max Verstappen's teammate. I mean, it's not easy being Liam Lawson.
We shouldn't underestimate that, what you said about Lawson not being swayed by Alonso. And when you're dropped into that situation thinking, well, am I getting a seat next year? Am I not? I don't know. Maybe people don't want me in this seat because the guy who was here before was very popular. And to get an earful and stand your ground, I think that's very impressive mental fortitude from such a young driver.
Yeah, points well made. This sport moves very, very quickly, doesn't it? It seems like a long time ago we were talking about Daniel Ricciardo. And of course, Liam Lawson is on the sister podcast to this one this week on F1 Explained. So do check that out. So the top 10 looked like this. Charles Leclerc took his 3rd win of the season, followed by his Ferrari teammate Carlos Sainz in P2 and Max Verstappen in P3. Norris was classified 4th following his 5-second penalty, with Piastri 5th in the 2nd McLaren. Russell went from the pit lane to 6th place, with Perez 7th, Hülkenberg 8th, Lawson 9th and Colapinto in 10th. In the Drivers' Championship, Verstappen has extended his lead at the top of the table to 57 points over Norris, with Leclerc 22 points further back in 3rd. Piastri's 4th and Sainz 5th, and then there's a bit of a jump back to the Mercedes drivers. Hamilton in 6th and Russell 7th. Perez is 8th, Alonso 9th and Hülkenberg is 10th. The Constructors' Championship is really heating up. McLaren lead, but Red Bull are only 40 points further back in 2nd, with Ferrari 8 points adrift of those two. Mercedes are a lonely 4th and Aston Martin an even more lonely 5th, and then it gets close again. Haas are 6th on 38 points, VCARB are 7th on 36, Williams are 8th on 17, Alpine are 9th on 13, and Sauber are a lonely 10th with 0. Guys, I feel we've done an excellent review.
Better than excellent. Superb.
Of the US Grand Prix. As ever, can we end the show with our driver of the day? Charles Leclerc won the vote on the telly. What do we think?
My driver of the day, I think I'm going to go with Franco Colapinto because he is still a man of relative inexperience. Got another point. Getting so close to getting the fastest lap in a Williams, if you don't mind. As such an inexperienced driver, again, he is building a legend we were not expecting to be discussing. And I think he was superb. I know he was under the radar in that race. We were too busy thinking about Leclerc, Sainz, and the battle between Norris and Verstappen. But again, another solid job, considering Williams didn't have a great qualifying. In previous races they were well up. This time he sort of had to come from way back and got the job done.
I'm going to go for Liam Lawson. I was really impressed. I don't think every junior driver, young driver that I've commentated on would be able to get into basically a brawl with Fernando Alonso, come back, you know, this is one of Yuki Tsunoda's best circuits on the calendar, and he scored points and Yuki hasn't. Great return to Formula One for Liam Lawson.
Both great drives, but I'm going to go for Max Verstappen because he's won so many races from the front. I don't feel he sometimes gets enough credit, and I felt the wheel-to-wheel nature of what he did against Lando Norris today he's a 3-time world champion. He's so good, and I just thought he drove brilliantly in a car that was inferior to the McLaren at that stage in the race, and it was just a reminder that if he wins his 4th title this year, okay, he ran away with it in the early races, but everything he's done in the second half of this season has been exemplary in a difficult car, and today was another example of that.
In Miami, of course, Lando Norris, that's where Lando flipped things, and we had a different season after that, and yet we're going away from Austin. Verstappen is further ahead of Norris in the championship than what he was after Miami. So it seems like Norris has closed on him during the season. He has not. Verstappen is further ahead than he was after Miami. So Verstappen set fair right now for a 4th world title.
And then we go again in Mexico next weekend. This is going to be a very short preview to that race. Just quickly, who do we think is going to win?
I don't know, but the food is absolutely terrific. Austin into Mexico City. This is some of the best days of the season. Who do I think is going to win? I think McLaren will be the car to beat once again.
Okay, why?
I think that they will have an understanding of what's required, and I think that car is just the best efficiency in terms of aero, and that's always rewarded in Mexico City.
I think in my case, as a statistician, I have the absolute best answer for all F1 fans as a statistician. I have no idea. And that's the best thing about Formula One right now, is that we can sit here, crunch the numbers, and come up with an answer that we think is right. And the whole thing's completely different when we actually run the cars around the racetrack. And that is making 2024 so compelling.
Yeah, and so our Statman is sitting on the fence.
I am. Splinters on standby.
That's a man who needs to do his homework ahead of next week.
Also this, yes.
Well, I'm going to say Ferrari. I think they're going to carry on where they left off. They're good there, and I don't know whether it'll be Charles Leclerc or Carlos Sainz, actually. I felt there was a rejuvenated Carlos Sainz this weekend. He's had a difficult time of it in recent races. I thought this was the Carlos that we saw early in the season. So, yeah, I'm going for them. Well, thank you both for coming on the show, to Alex, to Sean. You can hear Alex on F1 TV, and you can read Sean's stats on F1.com and on the F1 app. And before I go, just a quick shout out about this week's F1 Beyond the Grids. I was speaking to Fernando Alonso ahead of his 400th Grand Prix in Mexico. He provides so many fascinating gems of insight into his career so far. I really enjoyed talking to him, and he reminded me what a competitive so-and-so he really is. And that is why he's done 400 races, because he wants it as much as he did in Melbourne 2001 at race number 1. That chat will be on your podcast app from Wednesday, and you can also watch it on the official F1 YouTube channel. So from us in the Austin paddock, thank you very much for listening. And something new for Mexico, we will be back later this week with a mini preview of the Mexico City Grand Prix. So listen out for that later this week. But for now, F1 Nation is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios.